Part of the initial process is the first sort of stages that we work on are inspirations of looks for each of the areas. And we also carve it up and do what we consider multiple space plans for the client to look at many options of how it could flow from the minute you walk in the door to, where you're going to be coming in from the garage entrance, if there's a garage or an outside parking area, or where you might, what kind of needs you might have at the beginning when you walk in and you want to have someone waiting for a potential ride service. Those are all things that are really important as we move through the process. So yes, we're incredibly involved in the space planning, and we give the client and developer and team many, many options to choose from for each of the areas.
Welcome to CREPN Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals who work with investors, buyers, and sellers of commercial real estate coast to coast. Whether you're an investor, broker, lender, property manager, attorney, or accountant, we're here to learn from the experts.
Welcome to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CREPN Radio. Thanks for joining us. My name is J. Darren Gross. This is a podcast focused on commercial real estate investment and risk management strategies. Weekly, we have conversations with commercial real estate investors and professionals who provide their experience and insight to help you grow your real estate portfolio. Today's interview is sponsored by Building Insurance and Risk. When you invest in real estate, it pays to work with a real estate investor protection specialist to protect yourself and your investment from catastrophic loss. The experts at Building Insurance and Risk focus on real estate investor protection. They provide you with multiple insurance coverage offers and a side-by-side coverage comparison. To learn more, go to buildinginsurancerisk.com. Today, my guest is Marcy Sagel. She's the founder and principal of MSA Interiors, with over 30 years of experience shaping multifamily housing, student living, and senior housing, and more. And in just a minute, we're going to speak with Marcy Sagel about from blueprints to brilliance, designing multifamily spaces that rent. But first, a quick reminder, if you like our show, CREPN Radio, there are a couple things you can do to help us out. You can like, share, and subscribe. And as always, we encourage you to leave a comment. We love to hear from our listeners. Also, if you want to see how attractive our guests are, be sure to check out our YouTube channel. You can find us on YouTube at Commercial Real Estate Pro Network. And while you're there, please subscribe. With that, I want to welcome my guest, Marcy Sagel. Welcome to CREPN Radio.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate that.
Well, I'm delighted to have you, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. But before we get started, if you could take just a minute and share with the listeners a little bit about your background.
Sure. I am a commercial interior designer. I'm a principal and founder of MSA Interiors, and we specialize in market rate multi-form. I can't even talk today, Darren. Sorry about that. Multifamily housing, senior housing, student housing, and affordable housing. And we've been doing it for over 30 years, and we love what we do. We do it all around the country, and we're very fortunate to work in the industry that we do.
Awesome. Well, to get started here, I wonder if you could take us and define, where does interior design start and stop?
We get involved very early on in the process. Developers typically hire us to work on a project, and we contract directly with the developer. We are in a team, the architect, the interior designer, the engineers, the general contractor. We start very early on in the process to define what might be the best space, what might be the best look, and doing all of the initial inspirations and space planning very, very early on in the process, so that we can take our time really marketing the project to the right audience and making sure that we're hitting the exact audience that they want to hit. So we do a little bit of looking at all of the competitors in the area and what their amenity spaces might look like, what their units might look like, and just really getting to know the area that we're doing the project in, and who that audience is that we're going to be renting to.
Got it. And for the work you're doing, is it primarily new construction, or do you also work on any kind of value add repositioning?
That's a great question. We do a lot of new build. We also do renovations, and we also do, it might be an office space that might be turned into a commercial multifamily, lots of different varying spaces that we work on. And whatever clients' needs are for multifamily, that's what we do.
Got it. And is there a project size range that you focus on?
We have worked on project, as small as 25 units, up to thousands of units at any given time. And the ones that are thousands of units are typically done in phases. So we might do a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and it might end up having maybe 3,000 or 4,000 units in it. So they can be quite large.
When you're working on a new project, something that hasn't yet been built, is it primarily through modeling that, with I forget what the various models are and stuff, but more digital modeling with, with what you're working with, or are you, is it conceptual, and then as you get to the more of the final build, that you're able to actually fully understand what you have?
So we typically work in Revit, and we work in the same model of Revit that the architect is working in. And we do 3D model it, and we do render it in 3D, because it's a great way to show design, and it's a great way to show a client how the space feels. And it gives them a much, deeper look at what we're sort of proposing for the design. And we actually do it all along the entire design process. We do it in-house. So we find that it's a really important part of the process. We've gotten quite good at rendering. And we feel that, developers and anyone else, when you can see the visuals much more clearly, it helps everybody make a decision in the direction.
Right. And as far as the elements of interior design, color always comes to mind, but I'm curious, are there like a list of characteristics that you think of, or is kind of a palette, or that you draw from when doing design? Is it everything you see and touch and feel that goes into your design?
So we work in this process that we feel is really important. When we put the team together, the team that makes decisions on the design are the developers, the owners, the management group. So we have a big, large management group that we could be working with, and they typically have a list of characteristics that we have to hit, such as square footage for a gym, square footage for a co-working area, square footage for any kind of amenity and development areas that we're going to be working on. So we get their characteristic list first, and we divide our space plan based on what some of their characteristics are. We've worked with a lot of the large management groups across the country, so we typically know what they're looking for, but they're always looking for new amenities inside and outside that we can be more creative with. So we like to offer some of those ideas up as well, and start to work those into our space plans.
Got it. And just as I'm listening to you, I'm kind of coming to this realization. Interior design, is that, and I guess I've in my mind, I'd always kind of segmented it to more of kind of the look and the feel inside a space. But as I'm listening to you, I'm kind of wondering, well, wait a minute, because you were talking about the size of various spaces. Uh, do you guys design like, take like an empty space and then carve it up into the usability or how the needs are for the various elements that are needed in that and work? Is that part of, are you guys designing that as well?
We are, it's part of the initial process is the first sort of stages that we work on are inspirations of looks for each of the areas. And we also carve it up and do what we consider multiple space plans for the client to look at many options of how it could flow from the minute you walk in the door to, where you're going to be coming in from the garage entrance, if there's a garage or an outside parking area, or where you might, what kind of needs you might have at the beginning when you walk in and you want to have someone waiting for a potential ride service. Those are all things that are really important as we move through the process. So yes, we're incredibly involved in the space planning, and we give the client and developer and team many, many options to choose from for each of the areas.
No, it makes sense now. I mean, even the words interior design as opposed to, for whatever reason, I guess architecture, I was thinking had more of a role in that. But as I'm listening to you, it's clear that the space, not just the textures and the colors in that, but actual the design of the space and the size of the space and all that makes complete sense. So when you're focusing on designing a space that will rent, are there different items or different considerations, like for the common space versus like the units, or is there a theme that crosses through all of that, or how do you look at that?
Yeah, so when you're initially walking someone through a space to look at for renting, the important factors are obviously that wow factor through the amenities, giving them many different areas that they might potentially want to go to if they moved in, and giving them all of those different levels of high level of amenities that people expect now. Indoors and outdoors. So when you're walking them through that tour, that's really important for them to see all of those different types of spaces, but ultimately they're renting the unit. So you've got to have the wow factor of the amenities, but then you walk into the unit and you want them to feel like it's spacious, that it has a lot of closet space, that it's easily accessible to the bathroom, and it has, a large enough kitchen and storage and all of those things that people are looking for in a unit space.
So I'm curious. I know it seems like a lot of units have gotten smaller in the square footage, but the ceiling height has increased. And just in that ratio, is there a ratio for um, one to feel like it's a comfortable space? It's not, if you have a 9 foot ceiling and you have a 600-foot unit, that's going to feel entirely different than if you have a 10 or 12 foot or whatever. I don't know what the new heights on ceilings are, but is there a ratio that goes into that? Is that anything you guys are involved in, or is that more architectural?
The architect typically decides the height of the ceiling. However, in the amenity spaces, the higher the ceiling, the more, I would say, the more effective an amenity space is. So we like to kind of like really raise the ceiling in the amenity spaces in certain different locations, depending on what that particular area might, focus in on. So we do have some say in that, but we have to work with the architect as a team to kind of figure out what those heights of ceilings are. For the units, they're pretty dictated from the architect. What we would do is we work on redlining a lot of the units once the architect does develop those unit plans. We might look at how the kitchen's laid out versus how the living room space is laid out, because we're looking at how furniture is going to be laid out once a person moves in, and whether they can turn a corner with a sofa, and those types of things are really what we focus on. And it's very different than what the architect focuses in on. So there's ways that we can lengthen a wall to have an area that might be longer to accommodate a console for a TV in the living room, or a better opening if we shift the wall just maybe 1 foot one way or the other way. to the bedroom area, that we might be able to get a much larger feeling living room. So we do look at all of that when we're looking at the plans prior to making any final decisions.
Yeah, no, it does. It's a critical part of the design. If you can't get in and out of the space easily with, especially furniture, it makes a lot of sense. Um, is there a particular, um, I guess one element that when you're uh, entertaining or starting a new project that it has to have in order to quote be rentable? I mean, to make it really wow. You mentioned the common space, but is there a one thing that really that you recognize it has to be?
So there's a couple factors that I think are really, really important in a unit. One are keeping the finishes really clean, and what I call they have a long shelf life. So people want to make the unit their own, and they want to define it with their furniture and with their accessories. And so you want to make the bathroom really like simple palette, and you want to have the living room and cabinetry be able to work with many different types of decor, and that goes with the flooring as well, the flooring selections. So we do try to keep it having a long shelf life. So we don't want to use any tile in the bathrooms that are going to be too dateable based on color. We want to keep it sort of a neutral palette. And we're doing a lot of painted cabinetry in a lot of units, but we don't want to go crazy with the colors because not every color appeals to everyone. So some developers are offering, in a larger apartment building, there might be 500 plus units. So you might have a white palette for the cabinetry, you might have a gray, or you might have, like, let's say a green, and you could pick from any one of those three. But typically we would keep it in a neutral palette, maybe giving people an opportunity to select which one they would prefer when the first lease up begins. People like that. It feels like they're customizing it to their own needs.
Yeah. No, the bright space. I know that see something that's nice and bright, and there's no furniture in it. It seems all roomy, and then you bring your stuff in, and then the right size is there. But that's funny. Um, so when you're, let's see, what else I got here. I want to ask you. So on some of the not the new construction, but more of the renovation type projects, is there a single element? Because obviously, if you have an existing structure, it's not as easy to, or I wouldn't think it would be as easy. It certainly wouldn't be as cost effective to, moving walls and all that kind of thing. Is there a starting point that you look to when entering into an existing project as opposed to a new construction project that is kind of a starting point for your vision? Is it different?
Yeah, it is a little bit of a different process. So typically we're working with the management group who's been hired to lease that particular building. And the reason why we end up, renovations happen anywhere between 5 and 10 years typically for any building to keep it fresh and updated. And if you're in a climate where you have a lot of competition and there's a lot of new builds around and you've been there for, let's say, 5 to 10 years already, the building, it typically needs some freshening up. And so the management group usually brings us in and we give them we do a walkthrough, we talk about what needs updating, and then we give them a budget, and then they can plan for that next year, what that budget might be. And it might be spread over 2 years, 3 years, depending on how much work they need. And typically it usually is with the furniture and even just some of the amenity spaces. So now we find ourselves, in a climate where, let's say you have people aging in a building and they've been there for long periods of time and they're turning over units more now, and they want to give the units maybe a freshened look or get an increased rent. What they typically would do would then, freshen up some of the finishes, the lighting, the cabinetry, the countertops, even the flooring in a particular unit. And then when they go to turn that unit with the new finishes, they can increase the rent by a sizable amount per month and capture that over a period of time. And that's typically how they do units in a renovation process. We would agree that, you would maybe have anywhere from 5 to 10% turnover that year. So we would turn over 10 units in an upgraded finish, so to speak.
Got it. You mentioned budget, always it's reality. Is there a significant difference from a low budget to a high budget to attract, make your property more rent desirable? Can you describe some of maybe the finishes or what a different budgets might present as in that scenario?
No, sure. I'll start with the larger budget. So typically in a renovation for a larger budget, we would be doing renovations of millwork and space planning to upgrade some of those space plans to accommodate, let's say, more co-working and Zoom rooms and different things that people are asking for in buildings now from a work from home standpoint. They want to be able to come out of their apartment and go down to a space that they can reserve and either be in a conference room, a Zoom room, an independent pod that they could be working with their own laptop. Those are things that we've been adding to many renovations now. And so they could be, expensive if you start to add glass doors and glass walls and different divisions of space and additional new millwork. So that would be the higher level. And then if we did it on more of an intermediate level, we might be just changing up some of the smaller finishes, like maybe upgrading a fireplace or freshening sort of the paint and wall surfaces and wallpaper, those kinds of things in a space along with the furniture. So that would be sort of what I would call more the intermediate level. And then we would also just upgrade furniture in a space and not touch any of the finishes at all, or maybe very little, like paint, as opposed to any of the more expensive finishes. And then a lower budget might just be, hey, I've got X amount of dollars. What can you do for this amount of money for this year? And then we have another budget for next year, which might be a little larger. We can do it in the phases, which is what we like to call it. More manageable sometimes for some of the management groups.
Got it. Is there any kind of a target return on investment that you provide or that your clients have as an expectation?
There is definitely, but we don't provide it. Usually the management group provides that to the ownership to show them that if they spend this money, they will get a return on their investment and what that differential would be. It is very, very important that properties keep up the look of their property, because if they don't, they will not be competitive in the market, wherever that market is. There's always new projects coming in to compete with you. So you do have to keep up. You do have to put it in your budget as your operating cost. And so the management group that's operating the space typically puts that in. And then once the project's sort of aged over a certain period of time, that number is going to go up in order to keep it fresh.
Yeah. No, important to keep up, with the competition. If you want to keep your rents up, that's important. Now, you mentioned, I don't know if you mentioned this before we started or when we started. You're based in Baltimore. Is there a territory that you work in? Do you work nationwide or?
We do work nationwide, but I would say most of our work is basically Utah east, all the way up from Buffalo down to Florida. So we do cover quite a large territory. We have projects out in California and on the West Coast, but typically most of our work is Utah east.
All right. A lot of repeat clients or constantly building new clients?
Well, we're always building new clients, but we have a lot of repeat clients. It's a very large part of our business as we've grown over, the long period of time that we've been doing it. And then we have, different people that we work with at different groups that leave and go on to another group and then take us to that new group. And that's also typically how we grow our portfolio of projects.
Awesome. Hey, Marcy, if we could, I'd like to shift gears here for a second. By day, I'm an insurance broker. And as such, I work with my clients to assess risk and determine what to do with the risk. And there's three strategies we typically use. We first look to see if we can avoid the risk. If that's not an option, we look to see if we can minimize the risk. And if we aren't able to avoid nor minimize, we look to see if we can transfer the risk. And that's what an insurance policy is. It's a risk transfer vehicle. And as such, I like to ask my guests if they can look at their own situation. Could be your clients, could be the whatever the fad is, whatever concerns you have that keep you up, and you identify it and consider to be the biggest risk is what I'm looking for. And again, while I'm an insurance broker, I'm not necessarily looking for an insurance-related answer. And so, if you're willing, I'd like to ask you, Marcy Sagel, what is the biggest risk?
I'm going to answer that in a few parts because there's different aspects of the job that can be different risks. So when we pick materials for a project, we have to make sure we're working with tried and true materials. Okay, materials that are not going to fail on a job. For instance, in the units, if we select a vinyl plank flooring, we want to make sure it's going to last. So we only work with manufacturers that we know are going to give us a solid product. We're not trying to test some new product on different people. We really want to make sure that those stand the test of time from a risk standpoint. So that's probably one of the biggest things. The second thing is the furniture. We also specify all of the furniture and are in installation. So we put all of the furniture into warehouses. And we have to make sure that the warehouses are bonded and insured and going to be doing replacement if there's any problems. And we use warehousing all over the country. And so we do a lot of due diligence to make sure that risk is minimal. And we work with a lot of the same vendors so that we make sure that we have very, very, very solid warehousing around the country. Really, really important to our job. There's so many aspects of that. The material goods that we order are sent directly to those warehouses. They have them come in on camera. They're signed for. If there's any look or damage to any box or item or pallet, they immediately are under record with us to open it up, inspect it, and give us a photo and report immediately within 24 hours so that we can report it to the manufacturer. And we want to make sure that our installations go as smoothly as possible. We have a really good track record with that. And the reason we do is because we use really good receivers. They receive it, they're knowledgeable, they take a picture of everything coming in. It's got an item number, it's got a quantity number, and then we have it on record that we can then log into their software and see all of those items online and match it up to our spreadsheets. It's very, very, very organized, and we like it that way. So we only work with groups that are very organized and can follow sort of the regimen that we're used to, so that we can minimize any of the risk.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I hadn't considered that, but clearly warehousing and storing and receiving and making sure it's all in good order.
A million different things that go into actually getting all of the furniture and finishes and accessories and everything that we use to a site.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's great. I appreciate you sharing that. Marcy, where can the listeners go if they'd like to learn more or connect with you?
Sure. So our website is msainteriors.com. Feel free to shoot me a message if you have any questions on there. And I'm happy to connect with anyone with any questions you have in regards to any type of multifamily housing and any of the risks and or development from an interior design standpoint that anyone might have.
Awesome. Well, Marcy Sagel, I cannot say thanks enough for taking the time to talk today. I've enjoyed it. I've learned a lot, and look forward to doing it again soon.
Thank you so much for having me. We would be happy to come and talk to you anytime about multifamily or any other types of interior design. Thank you again.
All right. For our listeners, if you like this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Remember, the more you know, the more you grow. That's all we've got this week. Until next time, thanks for listening to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CREPN Radio.
You're listening to CREPN Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals. For more information on this or any of our guests, like us on Facebook, CREPN Radio.